The story begins with a dark and stormy night in an ancient Chinese home. Several men in black robes are lined up in an ominous formation. One of them asks if there's anyone present. Outside, a puddle of water has formed from the continuous rain. A dirty child stands under the downpour, facing the men in black robes. His small frame and quiet demeanor contrast starkly with their imposing presence. The way the men stand there, motionless and silent, is unnerving. A man with red eyes watches the boy intently, his thoughts focused on the strange fact that someone is living in the abandoned martial academy. He addresses the boy, calling him a young warrior, and politely asks if they could spend the night there to avoid the rain. The boy, cautious but composed, observes the men carefully. He wonders who they are and why they have come. It surprises him that they are addressing him so politely, especially since he is just a child. He begins to think that perhaps these people view him as a young Taoist monk guarding the shut-down academy. Deciding to match their respect, he greets them back, explaining that he also recently settled in the closed academy. He tells them they are free to stay wherever they want, but specifically requests that they avoid the pavilion he uses. The men, showing gratitude, thank the young warrior for his hospitality. Their leader then instructs the group to stay clear of the boys' pavilion and find other shelters within the academy. When he asks if they understood, the men respond in unison with a resounding yes. They disperse to find their spaces, leaving the boy to his thoughts. As they leave, the boy notices the word Tang embroidered on their robes. He wonders if they are all from the same clan and grows curious about their identities. However, he decides to set his curiosity aside for now, as he has more pressing matters to attend to. Entering his pavilion, his serious demeanor shifts to one of delight. It's dinner time, and he is eager to feed his kids. The scene inside his pavilion reveals an unexpected twist. His companions are not people but a collection of fascinating creatures. Excitedly, he calls them to eat. He opens a large pot, revealing a small, brown, cricket-like insect. Smiling fondly, he murmurs to the insect, "I was almost late. You must be starving." He then opens another pot, which contains a large spider known as the black earth tiger tarantula. Native to Hainan, China, this spider species is characterized by its striking black tiger-like stripes and can grow up to 20 centimeters in size. Using chopsticks, the boy carefully grabs an insect to feed the spider. He watches with satisfaction as the spider eagerly devours its meal, marveling at how much it has grown. This once fingernail-sized spider has already shed its shell twice, a fact that fascinates him. Next, he opens a drawer to reveal an orange gecko with white stripes, known as the bewangling cave gecko. This rare species is distinguished by the striking stripes on its body and tail. The boy remarks how difficult it was to acquire in his previous life due to a lack of money. Now, however, he can find them easily in the wild. As he feeds the gecko, it unexpectedly bites his finger. He yells in pain and swings his hand to shake it off, but the stubborn creature refuses to let go. This moment of chaos reminds the boy of his previous life. Before he came into this body, he was a famous streamer with a staggering 1 million subscribers, known as Spicy Fab. He was a professional biologist specializing in venomous insects and animals. His popularity soared due to his fascinating and often dangerous content. The boy reflects on the event that led to his death. During a live broadcast celebrating 1 million subscribers, he decided to showcase the 10 most dangerous vipers in the world. Among them, the black mamba was the deadliest and most elusive. Determined to find it, he traveled to Africa, but after a fruitless search, he told his viewers he would take a break and continue the hunt later. Unbeknownst to him, the black mamba had already found its way into his home. It was curled up atop his refrigerator. During the live broadcast, the snake bit him, killing him instantly in front of his audience. Snapping back to the present, the boy pouts at the memory of his untimely demise. Just then, there's a knock at the door. An elderly man in a black robe stands outside, thanking him for his hospitality. He invites the boy to join them for dinner, as they have caught a deer. Hearing this, the boy's eyes light up with excitement. Meat is a rare luxury for him, as his usual diet consists of snakes and lizards. He eagerly accepts the invitation and follows the man to the bonfire, where the deer is being cooked. The tantalizing aroma of roasting meat fills the air, and the boy can't help but drool. Noticing this, the elder chuckles and reassures him that the food will be ready soon. To pass the time, the elder begins to ask him questions. The elder inquires if the boy lives alone and how old he is. The boy, unsure of his exact age, replies that he might be 14 or 15. He explains that he doesn't remember much due to an accident that caused him to hit his head as a child. He adds that he survives by catching snakes and selling their skins. The elder is shocked by the boy's dangerous lifestyle, but the boy assures him he is used to it. Once the deer is cooked, the boy thanks the men and begins eating. The first bite brings him immense joy, and he thinks to himself, "This is happiness." As they eat, the elder reveals their true purpose. They are searching for a creature called the blue spot centipede. This massive centipede, marked by a distinctive blue spot, is said to be large enough to swallow a person whole. The boy turns pale at the description, realizing that his assumption of having traveled back a few hundred years might be wrong. Instead, he wonders if he has been transported to an entirely different world. The elder reassures him, stating that they are capable of catching the creature and he need not worry. The boy listens intently, his mind racing with thoughts of the dangers that might lie ahead in this unfamiliar world. The boy asked if they were trying to catch the blue spot centipede and raise it. The elders were perplexed by the raising part, but the white-haired elder was amused. Eventually, he belted out a loud laugh. They found the idea of raising such a dangerous creature hilarious. The patriarch commented on how funny the young warrior was, while the white-haired elder replied that there was no way they could raise it. They planned to use it as medicine. The boy was confused. Initially, he thought they might be traders, but now he started thinking they might be drug dealers. He asked how centipedes could be used as medicine. The white-haired elder explained that his granddaughter was gravely ill and bedridden. The inner core of the centipede was the only thing that could save her, so they were desperately searching for it. The boy began piecing everything together, and the patriarch confirmed his suspicions. The granddaughter of the white-haired elder was, in fact, the patriarch's daughter. To the boy, it seemed like they were willing to feed the girl anything since she was on the verge of death. He didn't believe centipedes could be used as medicine, but he also understood that there was nothing parents wouldn't do for their children. Although he felt bad for the centipede, he decided to help the elders as a gesture of gratitude for the meat they had shared with him earlier. He began sharing his knowledge about centipedes, which caught the patriarch's immediate attention. The man asked if the boy had seen the creature. The boy replied no, but added that while he didn't know exactly what a blue spot centipede was, he might have an idea of where to find it. Despite dying from a snake bite in his previous life, the boy, formerly known as Spicy Fabre, was more confident than anyone else when it came to venomous animals. Among the 8.7 million known species, around 20,000 were venomous, and he had memorized every single one. Centipedes, of course, were no exception. Spicy Fabre had been a walking encyclopedia of venomous creatures, and in this new world, his encyclopedic knowledge remained intact. The boy mentally visualized flipping through pages of a book, searching for information on centipedes. After a few moments, he closed the book in his mind and declared that he had found what he was looking for. Returning to the present, he confidently told the elders he might know where the centipede could be found. The group was startled and immediately asked for details. The boy first inquired about the areas they had already searched. They told him they had combed the northern and eastern areas of the academy, focusing mainly on the riverside. Hearing this, the boy wasn't surprised they hadn't found it. He explained, "Of course you couldn't find it." The elders, confused, asked him to clarify. The boy began explaining the biology of centipedes. Centipedes belong to the Arthropoda phylum and the Collopoda class, meaning they have a wide range of habitats. As cold-blooded creatures, they need specific shelters to regulate temperature and humidity. He continued, "Unlike most insects with a waterproof layer, centipedes have weak waterproofing due to pores on their shells. They need high humidity but avoid overly wet places. While they can't survive without water, they won't typically be found in jungles or near rivers. They prefer cracks, rotten wood, or warm, dry hiding spots. The elders were astonished, having assumed that centipedes thrived in wet environments. The boy corrected them further. While smaller centipedes might live in such places, larger ones couldn't survive there because they lacked adequate hiding spots. The elders exchanged knowing glances, communicating silently. They asked the boy where they should search. The patriarch promised a great reward if the boy's guidance proved helpful. The boy smiled and pointed west, suggesting they search the Rocky Mountains. He explained that large centipedes often rest under warm rocks during the day and roam at night. A few hours later, the group began searching the rocky terrain to the west. Despite their thorough efforts, they found no trace of the centipede. One man approached the patriarch, expressing doubts about the young warrior's advice. The patriarch ordered them to call it a day. A signal arrow was fired to gather the search team back at their camp. Exhausted, the men sat around the bonfire, their hope in the young warrior's intelligence keeping them motivated. The patriarch remained silent, his face pained. Eventually, he spoke, lamenting his daughter's fate. He described her as the most exceptional talent in the history of the Tang family and questioned whether the heavens had abandoned her. Suddenly, someone announced the return of the Grand Patriarch. The patriarch greeted him warmly, and the two leaders began discussing their failure to find the centipede. Both admitted their efforts had been fruitless. The Grand Patriarch grimly stated that the girl, Wei-yin, likely had no more than 3 months to live and doubted they could locate the centipede in just 10 days. A heavy silence hung over the group. The patriarch suggested exploring the southern region next, as they hadn't found any traces in the other directions. The Grand Patriarch agreed. However, the patriarch suddenly laughed, as if struck by a realization. "How could I have missed that?" he exclaimed. The Grand Patriarch, confused, asked if he had seen something. The patriarch replied, "No," but elaborated. "It's exactly as you said. There's no trace of anything. No animals, no droppings, no territorial markings." The Grand Patriarch nodded, adding that this absence of life was precisely why he believed they were in the right place. The patriarch then realized the truth. The mountain was too quiet. It had to be the territory of a predator so fearsome that no other creatures dared to inhabit the area. The Grand Patriarch suspected that all the creatures in the area had either fled or become food for the centipede. He patted the patriarch on the shoulder and reassured him, "The blue spot centipede is definitely here." With renewed certainty, they believed they could save Han. The patriarch's face showed a mix of sadness and hope, the expression of a father desperate to save his child. Suddenly, the ground began to shake. Everyone became alert. Panic set in as cracks formed in the earth beneath them. The area around the bonfire crumbled unexpectedly, then began to rise. The men were confused and alarmed, unsure of what was happening. A massive limb emerged from the ground, and before they could process it, another one followed. They pointed at the emerging creature, their terror growing. Even the Grand Patriarch looked nervous. As more limbs appeared, it became clear what they were dealing with: the blue spot centipede. And it was enormous. Back at the academy, the boy complained about the chaos. He wondered just how big the centipede must be to cause such a commotion. "I told them to look for it, not turn the whole mountain upside down," he grumbled. Despite his irritation, he was amazed by the thought of a centipede so large it could swallow him whole. As a self-proclaimed poison enthusiast, he couldn't help but want to see it for himself. Back at the Rocky Mountain, the chaos eventually settled. The men had managed to defeat the blue spot centipede, though not without sustaining injuries. They successfully extracted its core, a baby blue gem encased in a wooden box. Tears of relief flowed as they realized they could now save Han. The patriarch turned to the Grand Patriarch and asked him to head to Sichuan first to treat the injured warriors. The Grand Patriarch was puzzled by the suggestion, prompting the patriarch to explain. "Grudges are carved in blood, and favors are carved in stone. That's how we live." In other words, they still had responsibilities to fulfill. The Grand Patriarch nodded, finally understanding. He admitted he had been so focused on Han that he almost made a grave mistake by neglecting other matters. Agreeing with the patriarch's reasoning, he added that it would be right to welcome the young warrior as a guest and reward him for his efforts. The patriarch ordered the injured warriors to receive treatment in the village while he personally visited the young warrior. He suspected the boy was curious about the outcome, and he wanted to deliver the news in person. Meanwhile, back at the academy, the boy was dealing with an entirely different situation. 3 small yellow centipedes clung to him like affectionate caterpillars. Their cute, squishy bodies rubbed against his face, leaving him in a dilemma. He had somehow become the father of the blue spot centipedes. As he glanced at them, a memory came to mind. The night before, when he had returned to his room, he had cleaned the eggs and placed them on his nightstand. By the time he woke up, they had already hatched. 1 centipede now lay happily on his head, and although he had sensed their hatching, he hadn't expected it to happen so quickly. He pouted as he tried to remove one from his shoulder. But there was a problem. They clung to him with unwavering attachment, thinking of him as their parent. Recalling the events of the previous night, he sighed. His curiosity about the centipede had led him to its hideout, where he had rashly kicked an insect in frustration. Losing his balance, he dropped his torch, but fortunately, the eggs he had collected remained unharmed. He was relieved that the rain had stopped, as it could have ruined his efforts entirely. Determined, he had secured the eggs at his waist and hurried home to clean them, promising to give them a proper bath soon. Back in the present, the boy was relieved he had saved the eggs, even if he couldn't see the living blue spot centipede. He asked the others to give him some space, knowing the hatchlings wouldn't need food until after their second molt. However, their constant clinging to his body was becoming a nuisance. An idea struck him. If he went into the water, perhaps they would finally leave him alone. A sly smirk appeared on his face as he decided to take a shower. One of the little centipedes, clueless about what was coming, shivered in response. A few hours later, the elder patriarch arrived at the academy. He walked toward the pavilion and knocked on the door, asking if the young warrior was inside. There was no response. He waited for a moment, then reached for the doorknob and decided to enter. As he stepped inside, he looked around and noticed herbs, jars, and medicine scattered across the room. It made him wonder if the young warrior was a medical practitioner. He felt it was rude to enter without permission and decided to leave, but a rustling sound caught his attention. It was coming from one of the pots. Curiosity got the better of him, and he turned back to open the pot. To his surprise, inside was a spider. His gaze then shifted to the drawers. He opened one and found a gecko. Looking around further, he discovered another pot containing beetles. There were also eggs and dried snakes scattered about. It was unbelievable. He couldn't fathom that the young warrior was raising venomous animals and their offspring. Even the Tang Clan, known for their familiarity with venomous creatures, had only managed to extract poison. They had never found a way to cultivate eggs like this. The elder thought about how lucky it was to encounter the young warrior. He believed this young man, not the previous events, was the true reason his daughter's life had been saved. The young warrior appeared and greeted him, concern evident on his face as he noticed the elder's bandaged arm. "Did you hurt yourself?" he asked. The elder waved off the concern. "It's nothing serious," he replied, "but I have something important too." Before he could finish, an ominous energy filled the room. Suddenly, the entrance behind the young warrior exploded. Slowly, a silhouette began to emerge. A grotesque figure with a burnt face, one eye, and a body resembling an ogre. The elder immediately pushed the young warrior aside, shouting, "Run!" The young warrior was stunned and confused. The monster let out a loud, guttural noise as it prepared to attack. In one swift motion, it stepped forward, moving unnaturally fast. Its massive hand struck out, but the elder blocked the blow with his uninjured arm. The impact was excruciating, and the monster pushed him back, sending him flying. Dust filled the area, causing the elder to cough violently, spitting up blood. He described the creature as being as strong as his father. Once again, he yelled for the young warrior to run. When the dust cleared, the horrifying scene revealed itself. The monster was choking the young warrior, lifting him off the ground. The young warrior gasped for air, while the monster laughed maniacally. "I heard the bastard from the Tang clan have come to Haiyan," the monster said, his voice dripping with malice. "Who would have thought that the son of the myriad poison divine sovereign would be here?" Injured and alone, the elder glared at the creature. "I don't know who you are," he retorted, "but why are you targeting us?" The monster sneered. "Can't you tell from my face and my fist?" He paused before announcing, "I'm the blood hand Rakshasa, Unang. And it was your father who did this to me." The elder's eyes widened in recognition. He had heard of Unang, a man who was struck by a poison palm and fell off a cliff. Yet, here he was alive and more dangerous than ever. "Let the boy go," the elder demanded. "He has nothing to do with this. Take my life instead." Unang's laughter echoed ominously. "Let him go? Never. I vowed to slaughter anyone who even brushes past the Tang clan's robes." The elder cursed inwardly. This damned demon. He realized Unang had no intention of sparing the young warrior. The boy's face had turned pale from lack of air as Unang tightened his grip, mocking him. "Die!" the monster roared, laughing cruelly. The young warrior, barely clinging to consciousness, weakly pleaded, "Please spare me." He was seconds away from losing his life. Suddenly, 3 pairs of fierce eyes gleamed from the shadows. The baby centipedes, tiny but fearsome, dashed toward Unang. Without hesitation, they attacked, biting into his flesh. Unang screamed in confusion and rage, shaking his arms violently to throw them off. "What the hell? Centipedes? They can't harm me." But the little creatures clung on, relentless in their assault. Unang dropped the young warrior, who fell to the ground, coughing and gasping for air. The tide of battle was about to turn. All of a sudden, Unang's neck turned violet, and he coughed up blood before collapsing to the ground. He groaned in pain, and moments later he died. Wei Sarong, our young warrior, was shocked and confused by what had just happened. He backed away cautiously, asking the elder, "Was that a bad person?" The elder, who had witnessed everything, was momentarily stunned. Then his bewilderment shifted into a wide grin as he realized something profound. This young warrior wasn't just a mere guest. In his mind, Sarong absolutely had to become a member of the Tang clan. A few days after Unang's sudden death, the elder was resting in bed. Sarong sighed as he placed a wet cloth on the elder's forehead, tending to him while he slept. The elder opened his eyes slightly and thanked the young warrior. Instead of accepting the gratitude, Sarong replied, "If you're thankful, just tell me where your companions are, and I'll check on them." Then he hesitated and added, "But I can't leave you alone. And we can't exactly call a doctor either." The elder reassured him, "Don't worry about me. I'll recover after a few days of rest." Sarong frowned, clearly skeptical. "You're way too calm for someone who just coughed up so much blood. Stop saying you're fine. You're in critical condition." The elder chuckled weakly. "I'm fine. I'm a martial artist after all." Sarong looked puzzled. "Martial artist? You mean like the kind who flies around and shoots fireballs or something?" The elder let out a small laugh. "Not everyone can do that, but it's one way to describe it." Sarong was amazed. This revelation further solidified his understanding that he was in a completely different world. After all, a centipede as big as a house didn't make sense in any normal world. The elder's expression turned serious. "Young warrior, I owe you my life. You saved me." With great effort, he formally introduced himself. "I am Tang Cole, son of the Sichuan Tang Clan." Finally, Sarong introduced himself as well. "I'm Wei Sarong." Cole's eyes lit up. "Wei? So means small, and Rong means dragon. That's a good name?" With curiosity bubbling, Cole confessed, "I have so many questions I'd like to ask you." Sarong shrugged. "Go ahead." Cole pointed at the centipedes clinging to Sarong. "Are those venomous?" Sarong rubbed one of the centipedes on its belly and replied, "Yep. They're blue spot centipedes." The revelation shocked Cole, making him rise from the bed. "You tamed them? How?" Sarong smiled and explained, "It's a long story. Do you really want to hear it?" Cole nodded eagerly. "I don't mind." Sarong began recounting how he raised the blue spot centipedes from eggs. By the end of the tale, Cole asked for confirmation. You raised them from eggs? Yep, Sarong replied proudly. I could even predict when they would hatch. Cole was awestruck. He couldn't fathom how the young warrior had managed such a feat. Sarong interrupted his thoughts. Wait here for a moment. He went to one of the drawers and pulled out 2 lizards. Holding them up, he grinned. Take a look at these. The first lizard had a brown body with yellow stripes and white stripes on its tail. This is an ordinary striped lizard, Sarong explained. Then he held up the second one. This lizard had a brown body and a pure white tail without any stripes. This one is special. I bred it myself. Cole raised an eyebrow. Are you saying you bred them to create that color? Sarong blushed, but nodded happily. Yep, I thought it looked pretty. Cole composed himself, then asked, can you also compare the ones with strong venom and breed them to create an even deadlier one? Sarong tilted his head. Ah. He paused to think and replied, theoretically it's possible. If we could identify which ones have stronger poison, we could probably do it. Cole's eyes widened in astonishment. Really? That's possible? His excitement startled Sarong, who took a step back. Without missing a beat, Cole declared, join my family. Sarong was taken aback. Wait, what? Cole began, tempting him. If you join, we'll generously teach you all our martial arts. You'll have access to elixirs, herbs, and any poisons you desire. Sarong hesitated, still unsure. Cole wasn't done. Someone like you could even capture or raise the legendary 10 great venomous creatures of the Central Plains martial world. Seeing Sarong still unconvinced, Cole added a final, bold incentive. Not to brag, but I could introduce you to one of the 3 flowers of the Central Plains, my daughter. Sarong turned red and screamed, hold on! Sarong asked Chaolon to clarify what he had just said. Chaolon, clearly amused, commented, even if you're young, you're still a man? He continued talking about the 3 flowers of the Central Plains, but Sarong quickly cut him off. Forget about the flowers, he said, redirecting the conversation. Instead, Sarong brought up the topic of the 10 great venomous creatures of the Central Plains. Are they as amazing as the blue spot centipede? He asked. Chaolon laughed. Of course. The blue spot centipede is impressive, but it's ranked much lower compared to the 10 great venomous creatures. From the giant scorpion to the golden frog that shines like gold, whatever you're imagining, it's far beyond that. Sarong's eyes sparkled with excitement, and Chaolon couldn't help but smile. It looked like he had succeeded in persuading the young warrior. 2 days later, a Tang Clan member arrived, visibly shocked. Bloodhand Rakshas attack Uneng showed up, he exclaimed. Chaolon replied calmly. It seems Uneng has been hiding and polishing his martial arts. He reached a level close to my father's. This revelation made the Tang Clan members realize something significant. One of them commented, if the patriarch sent him to his death, could it mean he has reached the realm of 10,000 poisons? The members congratulated him enthusiastically. But the patriarch shook his head. I haven't, he clarified. It wasn't me. The one who killed Uneng is the young warrior. The jaws of the Tang Clan members collectively dropped in disbelief. One of them immediately clasped Sarong's hand and thanked him profusely for saving the patriarch of the Sichuan Tang Clan. Are you an elder who has undergone rejuvenation? One of them asked, utterly confused. Sarong looked puzzled, while the elder noticed the misunderstanding. He requested Sarong to clarify. Sarong tapped his chest and called out, come on, guys. His clothes rustled, and 3 adorable centipedes peeked out, crawling onto his shoulders. The Tang Clan members gasped at the sight of them. That is a blue spot centipede, one of them exclaimed. The patriarch nodded and explained. Yes, these little centipedes got rid of Uneng. The members were astonished, finding it hard to believe. You tamed them? One asked in disbelief. The patriarch nodded again. That's why I've decided to accept the young warrior as one of our own. However, Sarong hesitated. I'll think about it a bit more, he replied. One of the clan members tried to persuade him. This is a great opportunity. The patriarch, sensing the need for urgency, uttered, we should get moving. I have a feeling we shouldn't be late. Sarong asked, are you still looking for something? Chaolon grew quiet for a moment, then began to explain. Blood Hand Rakshas attack Unang practiced a devil art called the Blood Hand Poison Claw. To reach its higher stages, one needs human blood and bone marrow. It's a cruel martial art. Sarong shuddered. That's creepy, he muttered. Chalon continued. If Unang left behind any secret scrolls or disciples, we need to eliminate them to ensure this martial art never returns to the world. And if anyone was captured, we need to rescue them as well. The patriarch turned to Sarong. Will you help us? After all, you're familiar with the geography of Haiyan Island. Sarong hesitated, looking sullen. He thought about the implications. Joining the Tang clan would mean a lifelong commitment. In his mind, he reasoned, it's only natural to assess the company atmosphere and the boss's character before signing on. After a moment of contemplation, Sarong agreed. I'll help, but only once the patriarch is fully recovered. The Tang clan members praised him for his decision. Sarong replied, it's about saving lives. Of course, I'll help. Inwardly, though, he had his own plans. This is the perfect chance to figure out what kind of place the Sichuan Tang Clan really is. Skilled people always reverse interview their potential employers. It took 3 days for Chalon to recover. They stopped by a village near the abandoned martial academy, searching for the base of Blood Hand Rakshas attack on Aang. They asked the villagers if there had been any reports of missing people. An old man shared, every year, 1 or 2 people go missing in the jungle, but there haven't been any periodic disappearances. Chalon fell in a deep thought. They thanked the village chief for the information. It's nothing, the chief replied. I'm honored to help the famous patriarch of the Sichuan Tang Clan. Excusing themselves, the group moved on. Unfortunately, their search yielded no important leads as they passed through the dense forest. Sarong asked Chalon if there was really nothing special about the village. Chalon explained that when Unang found and revealed himself, it was in that area. However, finding him hadn't been easy. Sarong found it strange as well. There were no traces left behind. Recalling what Unang had said, something clicked in his mind. He turned to the elder and asked, do you remember what that bastard said when he showed up? Chalon replied, not really. Sarong remembered how Chalon had been thrown away by Unang's palm at that moment. So he reminded him. The bastard said, I heard the bastards from the Tang clan have come to Haiyan. Sarong continued, in other words, Unang must have been informed by someone. That means all we need to do is check the places the Tang clan passed through in Haiyan. He then suggested going around with Unang's portrait, confident they could find out more. The group stared at Sarong in astonishment, impressed by his reasoning. If Unang had received information, it had to be from someone who had seen the Tang clan. This realization made their task much simpler. They departed immediately, arriving at a village that appeared gloomy. One Tang clan member reported that, based on what he'd heard at the port in Haiyan, this village seemed significant. Chalon confirmed, this is the place where those HLY people live. Expecting no hostility, they decided to approach the village. However, the villagers looked lifeless. When the Tang clan called out to ask if anyone was available, they caught the attention of a villager. Seeing the Tang clan, the villagers muttered, what are Han people doing here? An old man, likely the village chief, approached, holding the hand of a frail-looking little girl. Behind them stood 2 guards, both appearing ill. Chalon introduced himself, while Sarong quietly observed. He noticed how weak the child looked and how lifeless the villagers seemed. Then, something struck him. Many villagers appeared droopy, as though they had taken some kind of medicine. The village chief stated firmly, no one's missing, and nothing special is happening in this village. Please leave. The elder tried to argue, but compared to the number of houses, the number of people, before he could finish, the village chief cut him off. It's nothing you should concern yourselves with. Please leave now. Once again, they were asked to leave. Both Chalon and Sarong were dumbfounded. Chalon whispered to Sarong, recalling his earlier comment that the HLY people should be friendly to them. Sarong had no response. As they were about to leave, Sarong noticed the little girl again. Suddenly, she collapsed. Everyone was startled. The village chief hurriedly placed her in his lap, tears pooling in his eyes. Jin, don't leave me, he whispered. You're the only family I have left. I can't bear to see you sick too. Chalon stepped forward and offered his help. I've studied medical arts. May I take a look at her? The village chief hesitated, then asked, Are you skilled in the Central Plains medical arts? Chaolon nodded. Yes, although I'm not a physician, I have some knowledge of medicine. The village chief, desperate, allowed him to proceed. As Chaolon examined the child, the chief explained, A plague has been spreading through our village for some time now. Children are dying, and even the healthy ones are suffering. Chaolon assured him, I'll do my best to help. The village chief thanked him profusely. He then scolded the guards for standing idly by and ordered them to guide Chaolon and his party inside. As they hurried to the house, Sarong asked a Tang clan member, Does the elder know medical arts too? The man nodded. Yes. The Tang clan's martial arts often involve poison, so we're also proficient in medicine. Martial arts start with understanding the body, and that includes knowing some medical arts. Sarong thought for a moment. I always assumed the Tang clan was just an assassin group that used poison. If I joined them, it would be great to learn medical arts instead of terrifying poison techniques. The clan member added, Sometimes we capture wicked bastards, inject them with poison, and observe how they react. Sarong's expression twisted in horror. You mean human experiments? The more he imagined it, the more terrified he became. Meanwhile, the village streets were eerily empty. Inside one of the houses, Chaolon sighed. I've transferred some of my chi to her. That stabilized her breathing for now. The village chief thanked Chaolon profusely and begged him to save his one and only granddaughter. Chaolon brought up a concern. There was something odd about the child's pulse. He asked if she had been born with a weak heart. The village chief explained that it had only been half a year since she started feeling sick. In addition to his granddaughter, other people in the village had also begun falling ill. They called it a mysterious disease. That was why he had told them to leave when they arrived earlier at the entrance. Chaolon assured the village chief, I will prepare some good medicine for the heart. He requested that the villagers be gathered so they could all try it. The village chief burst into tears and thanked him repeatedly and genuinely. Sarong, observing from the side, watched Chaolon intently. Later that night, a Tang clan member walked alongside the patriarch and acknowledged his hard work tending to the patients. The patriarch thanked him. Pai then asked about the symptoms. Chaolon replied, It's quite unusual. The patients exhibit lethargy, swelling in the eyes, light fevers, irregular pulses, all different symptoms. However, those with the most severe cases all seem to have heart problems. Chaolon then inquired, Where's Sarong's? Pai responded, He must be tired from helping. He fell asleep, so I left him in his room. Chaolon nodded in agreement. It makes sense. He doesn't know martial arts, yet he's been keeping up with us all this time. He must be exhausted. Deciding to check on him, Chaolon headed to Sarong's room. Pai offered to accompany him. When they entered the room, Sarong was fast asleep on the bed. Nearby, his 3 centipedes rested quietly in a basket. Chaolon peered inside the room and immediately noticed something unusual. Without hesitation, he stepped in, raised his hand, and struck Sarong's cheek. The slap was heavy, jolting Sarong awake with a sharp pain on his face. Startled and confused, he cradled his cheek and glared at Chaolon. What's wrong with you all of a sudden? He exclaimed angrily. That hurt. Chaolon apologized calmly, explaining, There was a bug on your face, and I needed to catch it. Sarong, still clutching his cheek, found the explanation unbelievable. A bug? Chaolon raised his hand again to show him the culprit. Yes, look at this. It's a big one. There are plenty of venomous insects in this area, and leaving it on your face could have been dangerous. Sarong examined the insect and was taken aback. Then something clicked. Wait, he said, turning to Chaolon. Even though the patients in this village are suffering from different diseases, they all have arrhythmia, right? Chaolon confirmed. That's correct. Realization dawned on Sarong. Pointing to the insect, he declared, It's this bug. This is the cause of the illness. He identified it as a kissing bug, a species from the Reduviidae family. They're called kissing bugs because they often suck blood from the eye or lip area. They're sneakier than mosquitoes and are also referred to as vampire or assassin bugs. The bugs themselves aren't venomous, but their stomachs are full of harmful parasites. When they bite and leave their excrement, people can get infected easily. They cause trypanosomiasis, also known as Chagas disease. These bugs are even ranked 7th among the animals most dangerous to humans. Turning to the village chief, Sarong asked, "Do the dogs in this village show similar symptoms? Do they run out of breath easily?" The village chief nodded. "Yes, they do." "Is it because of this bug too?" Sarong confirmed. "Yes, it is." The village chief's voice trembled with hope. "Does this mean you can save my granddaughter?" Sarong replied confidently. "It's possible, as long as we have the right medicine." Chalon grinned and turned to Pai. "What do you think?" Pai smiled knowingly. "I think I see the young warrior's true value." Sarong, noticing their expressions, looked puzzled. "What's wrong with you too?" Chalon and Pai exchanged a glance before saying, "We're the Sichuan Tang family." Sarong looked clueless and annoyed. "So what?" His confused expression made them chuckle. Chalon decided to explain further. "There's something called goo. Some say it involves venomous parasites. Others call it witchcraft. These bugs are grown by evil practitioners in China. They feed these bugs to people to cause pain or make them obey their will." Sarong replied that it sounded incredible. Chalon agreed but explained, "Countless martial artists have been killed by goo, forced to kill their own children, or betrayed their families to become slaves of those evil men. That's why so many didn't spare any effort to find an antidote against goo." He clarified that he was referring to cures that could either force the goo to leave the body or dissolve and kill them internally. Sarong began to grasp the seriousness of the situation. Then, Chalon posed a question. If someone succeeded in creating a cure, who could it be? With pride, he answered his own question. "Of course, it's the great Sichuan Tang family." He elaborated, saying that if they had something capable of dissolving a fist-sized roundworm inside the body, then dealing with a tiny bug would be no problem. He displayed a curse-melting orb, adding, "Even a small amount of this medicine should be enough." Sarong expressed his amazement, though inwardly, he couldn't help but think about how fancy the name was for what was essentially an anti-parasitic drug. The Tang family assured the village chief that they could save his granddaughter. True to their word, the villagers began recovering one by one, starting with the chief's granddaughter. The chief was overwhelmed with relief, and the villagers' warm hospitality was a heartwarming reward. Seeing their bright and cheerful expressions, it seemed the rumors about their optimistic personalities were true. Chalon later remarked, "This wouldn't have been possible if Sarong hadn't identified the cause." He then told the villagers, "I don't deserve your gratitude, Sarong does." The villagers showered Sarong with thanks, calling him their savior. Even though it was the Tang family's medicine that cured the villagers, Chalon gave all the credit to Sarong. Watching Sarong receive their gratitude brought Chalon immense satisfaction and joy, as if he himself were being thanked. Sarong was touched by the sight, and everyone rejoiced, throwing him into the air repeatedly in celebration. A bit later, the village chief whispered something into Chalon's ear, referencing what they had discussed earlier at the village entrance. Chalon asked, "What is it?" The chief explained, "It's about the villages where people have gone missing." Chalon remembered the conversation and asked, "What about it?" The old man, eager to repay their kindness, shared a strange story he had heard. "Among our village women, there is one who came from another village. She told me that a few years ago, her hometown suffered a tragedy. Several people disappeared. Hearing this, they believed they might have found a lead." Chalon asked, "Where is this village?" The village chief replied, "It's a small village to the west." When they arrived, the air reeked of corpses. They knew they were in the right place. Chalon surveyed the area, spotting corpses, trash, and bugs scattered everywhere. There was poison in the air. Pai warned Sarong, "Don't look, it's too gruesome." But Sarong had already seen everything. Suddenly, a man noticed something unusual. "What is that?" he asked. There among the chaos was a golden chicken foot. At first, they joked, "It ate the corpse of a snake." "No, wait, I'm kidding. It's a mysterious bird." The bird had a golden tail, with feathers and hues of purple, pink, and black. It looked magical. One person, enraged by the bird dishonoring the dead, picked up a rock and hurled it at the creature. Chalon tried to stop him, but it was too late. The bird evaded the rock, but definitely noticed them. The man seethed with fury, but Xiaolon placed a hand on his shoulder. Something feels off, he warned. The bird spread its wings, releasing a miasma into the air. Sarong watched in horror as the skeletons began to melt. Someone quickly covered Sarong's mouth, while Xiaolon shouted, "Run!" While holding Sarong's mouth and nose to protect him, Xiaolon explained, "That beast is a Xeno." The name literally translates to poison-feathered bird. After escaping to safety, the group gathered around Xiaolon, who described the creature. When it spreads its wings, it measures 5 zhang wide. Its beak is sharp and bronze-colored, and its body is covered in purple feathers. When it unleashes its fury, everything around it turns black and dies, leaving only poison behind. On its head, it has a golden crown, giving it a truly regal presence. This is known as a Geno or Poison King bird. Sarong had a lot of thoughts racing through his mind. His eyes were filled with enthusiasm as he asked if it was one of the 10 great venomous creatures. Xiaolon replied, yes, and explained that this creature occupied the very top of the list, known as the Genya, the king of all venom. Sarong was so excited that in his mind, even venomous insects and snakes on Earth seemed adorable in comparison to it. He thought about how biochemical weapons now roamed freely in his world. Xiaolon continued, saying that it seemed to have been drawn there by snakes carrying venom. He added that the Jia only eats the heads of venomous snakes. Sarong, curious, asked if this was common. Xiaolon replied that it was rare, so rare that one might only catch a glimpse of it once every 100 years. Sarong was amazed by this, prompting Xiaolon to inquire why he asked. Sarong then asked, is it possible to catch it? The Tang Clan members were taken aback by this question. Keelan, amused, asked, do you want to try catching it? Sarong replied, yes, but I'm worried about the venom. Xiaolon smiled knowingly. He understood that Sarong had a great interest in the 10 great venomous creatures. If that's the case, he said, I can teach you a way. Sarong, surprised, asked, what is it? Xiaolon informed him that if he mastered the Tang clan's poison techniques, he would become immune to all poisons, including the Geno's venom. Only with our clan's martial arts can you block poisons from the entire world. Xiaolon slyly added that the Tang clan didn't teach their techniques to outsiders, and even if he wanted to help, he couldn't break the rules as the patriarch. Sarong eagerly asked if he could learn it if he became part of the family. He also asked, if I become immune to poison, would I really be able to withstand the Geno's venom? Xiaolon replied confidently, of course. If you agree now, I'll teach you without holding back, and I'll ensure you take care of your gift as well. He added that if Sarong hesitated any longer, he would begin to hesitate too. Feeling the pressure, Sarong announced that he would join the clan. I'm looking forward to your guidance, he said, calling Xiaolon patriarch instead of elder. The cunning patriarch gave him a mischievous grin and replied, as if he hadn't subtly baited Sarong into agreeing. From now on, you are forever part of our family. Meanwhile, at the rotting place, traces of the blood hand Rakasa Takanyong were found in a cave. There were also footsteps. The patriarch was called over and given a notebook they found inside the cave. Xiaolon scanned it and confirmed, this is the secret technique of the blood hand poison claw. Sarong was creeped out by the fact that it was written in blood. Xiaolon decided it was time to head back. Sarong asked, are we going to Sichuan? Xiaolon replied that it would be best now that they had obtained the blue spot centipede's core and secured the manual. Sarong then asked if it would be all right to stop by the academy, as he wanted to release his friends. Xiaolon agreed, since Sarong needed to gather his belongings too. They headed out, but as Sarong looked behind him, he noticed something. He pointed and said, there's something over there. They checked and saw a shining purple feather from the Jiao. They all stared at it, deep in thought. Xiaolon took the feather and told Sarong, I'll consider this a commemorative gift for becoming part of our family. Sarong, intrigued, thanked him. Xiaolon replied, everything is fine, except for how you addressed me. You should change the title after the ceremony. Sarong wondered aloud if this was like an initiation ceremony. Meanwhile, at the Tang clan, the Grand Patriarch, Tang Musang, who had left earlier, had finally returned. He was exhausted but didn't rest. Instead, he immediately asked how Han was doing. He was assisted by the Tang members as they hurried inside. They told him, "She's holding on to life." The door opened, and Muzang immediately called out to his daughter-in-law. The people inside were surprised to see him. He told her, "I have the medicine now." He took out the core of the blue spot centipede. Seeing that he had succeeded, his daughter-in-law began to cry. They prepared to give her the medicine. Muzang's expression grew somber as he watched her pained expression. That was a close call, he thought, relieved that he had hurried back. His daughter-in-law encouraged him to give her the medicine at once. Muzang made his granddaughter swallow it. A blue glow surrounded her. Muzang placed a finger on her hand to check her pulse. Everyone wished for her to open her eyes. They watched her as they waited. Meanwhile, Sarong looked groggy. He had heard that the Central Plains were vast, but he didn't expect it to be that vast. From Haiyan, they took a boat to Hongju, then passed through Nanjing. After a journey lasting over a month and a half, they finally arrived in Sichuan at the Sichuan Tang Clan's residence. Pai happily announced to Sarong that they had arrived at the Sichuan Tang Clan. Sarong's mouth hung open as they stood at the entrance. They informed him that the entire mountain belonged to the Sichuan Tang Clan, which is why the mountain was called Tang Clan Mountain. Sarong gulped, taking it all in. Immediately, the members of the Tang Clan came out to welcome the patriarch. Sarong was taken aback because there were so many of them. He wondered if all these people were from the Sichuan Tang Clan. Amidst the crowd, a girl in a red dress was running towards them, clearly in a hurry. She called out to her father, and tears streamed down her face as she was simply overjoyed to see her father again. Meanwhile, Sarong was completely bewitched. Chaolon was glad to see his daughter alive and hugged her tightly, apologizing to her. Sarong couldn't fathom her beauty. He had had a fling with a celebrity in his past life, but he had never seen someone with such a radiant aura before. Chaolon, noticing Sarong's reaction, smiled and told him that he had someone he wanted to introduce. Chaolon introduced his daughter, Han, to Sarong. Sarong was dumbfounded. He asked if this was the same person Chaolon had mentioned before. Sarong recalled their conversation about a weed or grass, which jogged Chaolon's memory. Chaolon then uttered, "It was about the flower." Sarong's face turned red with embarrassment as Chaolon told him, "The girl beside me is the flower you brushed off." Sarong was speechless. He recalled their conversation about the flower and felt utterly embarrassed. At that moment, Sarong realized he had messed up. He had never imagined that he had let go of the chance to have such a beautiful waifu. The only daughter of the Sichuan Tang Clan, also known as the Venomous Flower. Han, known as the Venomous Flower, carried an emotional burden that no one knew about. Since she was young, she overheard old men talking about her. They couldn't be sure of her talent, but her beauty was so outstanding that she was called one of the 3 flowers of the Murim. They discussed her having a suitable son-in-law. One of the old men even suggested that the patriarch take a second wife, but the patriarch refused, which baffled the other men. When Han heard that, she knew her parents weren't wrong. She wanted to prove herself to the clan elders by making great achievements in the family's martial arts. She wanted to show that she could do a lot for the family, even if she wasn't a man. But haste makes waste, and impatience led her astray. Her impatience gave rise to a heart demon, and that heart demon led to key deviation. We then see Han wake up. The Grand Patriarch, her mother, and 2 other people were gathered around her bed. Her mother looked relieved now that she was safe. Tears fell from Han's eyes as she cried and apologized to her mother. She wanted to be useful to the clan, but she had lost all her inner chi, the Grand Patriarch replied, calling her a brat. He asked her if she was feeling sorry for making her father and grandfather suffer. He pointed out how she had reached the level of the 100 poisons, something she had desperately wanted. He told her to stop crying and cheered her up. Han was surprised when the Grand Patriarch mentioned poisons. She looked at her aura, which was glowing. She asked her grandfather about it. The Grand Patriarch then told her a story about a mysterious young warrior who not only saved her life, but also gave her the inner chi of 1,000 poisons, not just 100 poisons. At that moment, Han asked about weed. Sarong had no response. He was embarrassed for referring to Chalon's daughter as Weed because he had been so immersed in the story of the 10 great venomous creatures. He mentally scolded his past self for such a mistake. He tried to dismiss it by saying the patriarch had taken the joke too far. He told Han that it was nice to meet her. It was amusing to see how all the clan members were smiling upon witnessing the encounter between these two young adults. Sarong introduced himself. He told her that he knew she had been sick, so he was happy to see that she was healthy now. Han told him it was nice to meet him. She introduced herself as Han and mentioned that she was also called the Venomous Flower. She thanked him for saving her life and promised that she would never forget his favor for the rest of her life. Sarong was enamored by how beautiful she was. Chalon then asked Sarong what he thought. Sarong's jaw dropped when he heard a voice in his head. He assumed it was some kind of sound transmission. Chalon asked if he agreed with him that his daughter was such a beauty. He also asked Sarong if he wanted to get to know her more. A few moments later, Sarong rested in a large bath, with the centipedes peacefully sleeping in a basket. Sarong felt like he was going to die. He looked haggard. Then he noticed something and smiled as he saw the centipedes. One of the centipedes woke up and smiled at him. Normally, they would never fall off, but when Sarong told them that hot water was bad for them and suggested they stay in the bucket, they just went in as if they understood. He found it mysterious, as if they could understand him. Chalon said that the centipedes react to killing intent. Two of the centipedes were now awake and watching him. Sarong told them that he felt embarrassed that they kept staring at his naked body. The two centipedes then hid inside the bucket. Sarong was amused and remembered that Pai had said the centipedes were spiritual creatures. He made a mental note to ask what spiritual creatures were later. Sarong thought about what Chalon had said. He couldn't calm down, realizing that he had to leave quickly. At a different pavilion, the family gathered around the table. The Grand Patriarch, the Patriarch, his wife, and daughter. Chalon told everyone that he would give the East Wing room to the young warrior. This room was one of the couple's bedrooms in a traditional Chinese residence. The Grand Patriarch asked if the young warrior was really that talented. The Patriarch replied yes, and he explained that he thought their meeting was a lucky encounter, but it wasn't just luck, it was Sarong himself. He explained that not only was Sarong's knowledge of venomous creatures extraordinary, but he had even killed Wang. What's more, Sarong had encountered legendary spiritual creatures like the poison feathered bird. Additionally, he had even hatched the blue spot centipede eggs himself. The Grand Patriarch commented that the Patriarch had found such a treasure. Their attention shifted to Han. Chalon told his daughter that he wanted to take the young warrior as his son-in-law. He asked what she thought about it. Han thought about what this meant, and then she realized. She fell silent. She wanted to show that she could be much more helpful to their clan now that she had acquired the constitution beyond 100 poisons, the 1,000 poisons constitution. She replied that she was also a member of the Tang Clan and understood what her father was saying. However, she told him that whether the young warrior deserved her was for her to find out. Then she ran out of the room. It was an awkward situation for Chalon. In his head, he thought the young warrior should be careful. As beautiful as a rose is, it also has sharp thorns. Han ran quickly, feeling hurt. Now that she had finally acquired the 1,000 poisons constitution, if she stopped there, the elders would never acknowledge her. She planned to thoroughly check what kind of person the young warrior was, from his qualifications to his personality. Meanwhile, Sarong was thinking about what he should do. He knew that Han would probably hold a grudge against him. He asked his kids, aka the centipedes, what he should do. Out of the blue, Han showed up, shocking him. She looked absolutely gorgeous. Sarong was thrown off. Han told Sarong to excuse her for a bit because she was in a hurry. She asked for his hand. He gave it to her like a dog giving a paw to its human. Then he blushed. He told her that he didn't know why she was in a hurry, but he suggested doing those things after they became closer. He shyly muttered that there was an order to things like that. Han asked, "What are you talking about?" Then realization dawned on her. Her entire face turned red like a tomato as she quickly corrected him, explaining that it wasn't what she meant. Sarong felt cold and disappointed upon realizing that it wasn't what he had initially thought. There was an awkward silence. Han sighed and clarified again that it wasn't what he was thinking. She had simply wanted to check his pulse. She guessed that her sudden request for his hand had caused the misunderstanding. Sarong felt ashamed. Han sat beside him, apologizing for appearing out of nowhere and acting rudely. She told him that he was young and hadn't come of age yet, but he seemed thoughtful, so she planned to explain what was going on. As she started explaining, Sarong paid close attention. From what he heard, he thought it sounded like a medieval drama. As the only direct descendant, Han constantly faced wicked schemes from the branch families. To ensure the continuation of the family line, the elders planned to bring in a highly capable son-in-law. They even considered how Sarong's standing in the family might change if he were to join it. Han apologized in advance, explaining that there was something she needed to confirm. She told him that even if things didn't turn out well, she had no intention of treating him poorly. She acknowledged that he was her benefactor and, of course, wanted to treat him well, either as a guest or like sworn siblings. Sarong extended his hand, telling her that he understood what she meant and that she was free to confirm whatever it was she needed to. Han observed him, took his hand, and placed her other hand on his pulse. As she did so, she began emitting a blue aura around her. She explained that the martial arts of the Tang clan weren't something just anyone could learn. Some people could accept toxins into their bodies and master the Tang clan's techniques, while others simply couldn't. That's why the Tang clan's poison techniques require one to gradually adapt to the poisons as their internal energy grows. Only by accepting them all can one achieve mastery. There are tiers to the poisons. It starts with 5 poisons, then 10 poisons, 100 poisons, 1,000 poisons, and finally 10,000 poisons. Fortunately, Sarong's body was capable of learning the poison techniques, but it could only handle 10 poisons. This meant his body could only manage 10 types of toxins. Having a 10-poison body was impressive, especially for someone not born into the Tang clan. Sarong was flabbergasted. Han continued, explaining that in terms of general skill, Sarong would only be placed at the level of a first-rate martial artist, which is the highest level someone with no innate talent could attain. Han decided to take her leave, and Sarong saw her off. He thought about what she had said. He had a 10-poison body and turned pale, realizing that it might mean he couldn't catch the Geno. For Sarong, this was a serious matter. A few hours later, someone stepped out of the bath. It was Han, and what a fan service moment it was. She noticed that ever since she took the inner core of the blue spot centipede, her body emitted a strange scent, even though she bathed several times a day. She put on her clothes and wondered if it was some kind of punishment for speaking ungratefully to the one who had saved her life. Meanwhile, Sarong was deep asleep, dreaming. In his dream, someone spoke to him, thanking him for his kindness. It was Han. He asked if he was dreaming, and Han replied that while it may feel like a dream, it wasn't. The Han in the dream explained that she had borrowed the appearance of the girl who consumed her inner core to avoid startling him. She introduced herself as the mother of all the blue spot centipedes. Sarong couldn't follow. 3 little girls then approached him, and he deduced that they were her babies. He asked her how she appeared in his dreams. She explained that she had been killed without mercy, leaving her children behind. Her grudge had reached the heavens, and her spirit had lingered in the inner core. While cursing from within the body of the girl who had consumed her core, a chance to resolve her grudge arose, allowing her to appear in Sarong's dreams. She added that it was all because he had brought all of her children with him. Sarong knew, deep down, that he had unknowingly revealed her location. He hadn't meant to, but he had ended up being involved in the death of the blue spot centipede. He watched her. She asked her benefactor if he could grant her one request. Sarong replied yes and promised to fulfill any request she might have. She asked him to take care of her children until they were fully grown. Sarong was confused since centipedes were supposed to become independent after molting twice from their mother's body. She replied that it might be true for lesser creatures, but they were different. She explained that until the offspring of her species shed their shells twice, they remained dependent on the qi flowing from their mother's inner core. Afterward, they would continue to grow by feeding on the true qi of other beings. Sarong then asked if, since Han had consumed the inner core, that meant the babies needed to stay with her. The mother centipede told him that he needed to understand the circumstances. She pointed out that earlier, She had cursed the girl because of her inner core. The girl's body was emitting a foul odor. The mother centipede had intended to ensure that no man would ever approach the girl, preventing her from ever bearing children. In exchange for lifting the curse, the mother bargained to let her children absorb the chi from her inner core. Perhaps by doing so, Sarong could also win the girl's heart. Sarong thought about it for a moment, then smiled and replied that it didn't sit right with him. He didn't want to take advantage of Han's difficult situation. The mother centipede couldn't help but admire him for being such an honorable person. She then asked how he planned to overcome this challenge. She pointed out that the girl was looking for a strong man, and that she couldn't exactly procure the inner core of the 10 great venomous creatures for him. This gave Sarong an idea. He asked her to trust him and assured her that he could handle it. He told her to leave it to him and that it would work out well. The next day, Sarong and Han were sitting side by side. Han now understood that the smell coming from her body was due to the blue spot centipede's inner core. Sarong told her that was correct, and if she attached the centipedes to her body every few days to let them absorb the chi, the smell would naturally fade away. Han had a question, but felt uncomfortable asking it. Nevertheless, she asked him if it was okay for her to share something with him without asking anything in return. She knew that he could easily request something as compensation. Sarong smiled and replied that he couldn't bring himself to take advantage of a woman's difficult situation. He refused to be that shameless. Han was surprised by his response. She felt bad and replied that she wouldn't keep accepting his kindness without offering something in return. Now, she considered her father's words seriously. Seeing Sarong made her realize that there were things more valuable than talent or martial prowess. Sarong then mentioned that he had been thinking as well. He brought up the topic when she had mentioned that he had a 10 poison body and could only absorb 10 types of toxins. Sarong had an idea. If he could only take in 10 types of toxins, why not fill those 10 slots with the toxins of the 10 most venomous creatures of the Central Plains? Han was surprised to hear this and interpreted it as him wanting to become the strongest under the heavens, all for her sake. The thought made her blush. For one of the 3 flowers of Murim, the venomous flower, Tang Han, this was the first time a man had ever made such a bold confession to her. She blushed, while Sarong smiled at her. She asked him if he realized what he had just said. Sarong replied that he didn't. Han told him that the path would be incredibly tough and challenging. It might take 10 years, 20 years, or perhaps a lifetime of effort to take on such a challenge. It was funny how Sarong's expression turned grim as he wondered if it would really take that long. Meanwhile, Han kept blushing. Han then brought up that Sarong was 15 years old. In 3 years, when he came of age and was ready to marry, if he managed to deal with even one of the 10 great venomous creatures by then she would consider it. She embarrassingly said that if he succeeded, there would be a possibility of a wedding. She screamed that she would be rooting for him, then stood up and dashed away. Sarong was puzzled. He called out to her, and she turned around, asking if he still had something to say. He suggested that she get treated and stay, even if just for a couple of hours. She was embarrassed, but she came back. Sarong assured her that there was nothing to worry about, since the little centipedes wouldn't bite. He gathered his kids and told them to go to their mom instead of their dad. Hearing that made Han turn as red as a tomato. She asked about the words dad and mom, but Sarong immediately clarified that it wasn't what he meant. Meanwhile, Qian, his wife, and Meng were gathered at the table. They discussed how the extraordinary talent of the young warrior couldn't even win their daughter's heart. Muzang asked if they had seen them this morning. He shared that it looked like something was going on between the two of them. Han's mother replied that it looked like the young warrior had been turned down by Han. The men were thinking hard. Muzang stated that forcing a marriage wasn't the right thing to do, and that it would be better for the two of them to naturally develop feelings for each other. Han's mother suggested letting Wei Yin handle the young warrior's martial arts training so they would spend more time together, which could help them grow closer. Chalson replied that it was a good idea. Muang stated that they should find out if the elder healer sage could bestow the grace of the purifying elixir of marrow and essence. If the young warrior's aptitude was low, it could be raised. Chelon was surprised that Muang would suggest that, given that it hadn't been possible for Han, so he thought it better not to get their hopes up. Muang agreed. At the same time, Han was outside the door and announced herself to her father. Cholin asked what brought her at this hour and invited her in. She blushed, not expecting to see the three of them there. She had come because she had something to say. She blushed again, and then, in one go, expressed that she would do as her father had said. Chan was taken aback and asked her what she meant. Han's mother invited her to sit, then asked if she meant that the young warrior had caught her interest. Han was so embarrassed that she couldn't say a word. Chan was curious about how this had happened so suddenly, especially when they had thought she didn't like him before. She started saying that the young warrior. Then she relayed that Sarong had told her he would become the greatest in the world for her and promised to do so. Chan was surprised. He became curious, so she encouraged Han to tell him more. Han said that although Sarong's innate talent was only at the level of 10 poisons, he promised to fill the gap by defeating the 10 great venomous creatures for her sake. Muang was amused. Cholin was surprised. Muzang laughed out loud and commented that the guy sure had guts. Han's mother was impressed, noting that it was unlikely to find a suitor like him. She explained that though her heart was willing, she would only agree to marriage if he could capture one of the 10 great venomous creatures before coming of age. She wondered if he understood her response. Her father joked that she should have asked for at least 3 creatures. Han's mother stated that men aren't particularly sharp about such things. Han then asked her mother if she should go and explain it to Sarong. Her mother replied, no. If he doesn't realize that we've already given our approval, he'll try harder. Muzang suggested treating him as a prospective son-in-law, but acting as though they were undecided. They expected that, with all the effort he would put in, he would naturally become part of the family. Meanwhile, the mother centipede told Sarong that he was impressive. She told him that he had completely won the lady's heart. He replied that it was all about guts and perseverance. She smiled warmly at him and called him her benefactor, informing him that it would likely be the last time she could do so. Her resentment had been resolved, so her soul would soon ascend to the afterlife. She asked if there was anything she could do for him, promising to do whatever was possible. Sarong thought about it and asked if he could take a look at her body. She felt shy, but thought it was expected, as he was a man after all. She saw him as someone with a weakness for lust. She revealed her shoulder and was about to strip, but he asked if she really needed to take it off. That made her blush even more. She asked if she should not take it off, and Sarong clarified that it wasn't what he meant. It was funny how the children were covering their eyes. Sarong clarified that he wanted to see the appearance of a blue spot centipede. She felt horrified as she understood, and smoke covered the area. Then, she revealed her true form. Sarong gasped at the sight of her. He was excited and happy to see her for real. It was amazing how huge she was. He asked if he could touch her, but he was already doing so. He inquired about her body, asking if it was waterproof. He talked about his vision of her walking and asked if he could touch her legs, but he was already doing it. He asked how strong her venom was about her eyes, even her antennae. He was so passionate. The children still had their eyes covered, which was really cute. Sarong was so enthusiastic that he even wanted to touch her fangs. She replied that it was dangerous, but he insisted. This made the blue spot centipede start to wonder if her daughters would be okay with this man. The reason for her concern was that she knew his touch was anything but ordinary. It was both funny and strange how Sarong drooled as he caressed her. Soon after, Sarong met Sarong over a cup of tea. He told him that he had heard everything from Han, and that was why he would be treated as their son-in-law. Sarong expressed how he thought he was supposed to wait for 3 years. Chan cut him off, saying that the wedding would naturally take place when he came of age. Sarong tried to clarify that that was not what he meant. Han's mother enthusiastically welcomed Sarong into the family and introduced herself as his future mother-in-law. Muse was pleased too. He stated that now that Han had found a suitable match, their clan would prosper even more. Sarong looked at Han, wondering what was going on, as there were supposed to be conditions for marriage. It made him think that they had probably accepted him without any discussion. He decided to play along for now and replied that he was looking forward to everyone's guidance. Sarong was puzzled when Muzang told Chalson that they should get started right away. Chalson informed Sarong that before he could learn the Tang Clan's poison arts, there was something they needed to show him. He asked what it was. The elders had smirks on their faces, and Charleston revealed that it was the Hall of 10,000 Poisons. He was certain that it was something Sarong would absolutely love. They had been waiting for that moment, for Sarong, as a family member, to take his first steps into the Hall of 10,000 Poisons. It was a cherished tradition for the entire family. Sarong called Musang grandfather and expressed that he was looking forward to it. He was excited, as he assumed the Hall of 10,000 Poisons was a place where 10,000 kinds of poisons were gathered. However, he caught a glimpse of Han's profile and couldn't help but be in awe of her beauty. He remembered the saying, "Beauties are best admired from the side," and at that moment, it felt as though a photo shoot had come to life. Sang blushed. It was funny how he got caught by his in-laws, who had smirks on their faces. Charleston commented that at that rate, Sarong might wear out his daughter's face. He told Sarong that Han was his woman now, yet he gazed at her so absent-mindedly. The mother-in-law couldn't help but express how Sarong looked like he was completely smitten with Han. Both Han and Sarong turned red. Han told him to watch where he was walking, and Sarong stuttered as he replied, "Yes." A short while later, 3 men stood in front of a large door. 2 men stood proudly, their muscles bulging from their bodies. They reminded Sarong of Opnin and Ipan, though he wasn't sure why. A man in a Tang Clan robe stood at the center and welcomed the Grand Patriarch. Musang ordered them to open the gates, since he was there to briefly show his grandson-in-law the Hall of 10,000 Poisons. The men obeyed his orders. In his head, Sarong commented on how, for something out of the Middle Ages, the security was ridiculously tight. The man in the black robe announced the gates were to be opened, and the 2 muscular men grabbed the heavy door and pushed it open. They put all their strength into opening the gigantic door. The man in the black robe commented that the gate had been opened quicker that day. Sarong was surprised by that reaction. After fully opening the gate, the 2 muscular men looked exhausted. The man in the black robe invited them inside. Cheon looked briefly at Sarong while they passed through. Sarong, bothered by the sight of the tired muscular men, seemed to offer them some form of consolation. Cheon explained that the iron gate was forged from Kunu steel source from the southern wilderness. Even opening the gate was considered an honor. They had arrived inside the treasure trove, where the Tang Clan of Sichuan stores all its poisons. It is called the Hall of 10,000 Poisons because it holds 10,000 types of poisons. Musang warned Sarong to be cautious and not to touch anything recklessly. Sarong replied that he understood and confirmed whether the chamber contained 10,000 poisons. Cheon shared that the poisons were carefully categorized, such as paralysis poisons, sleep poisons, and many others. It was evident that the elderly people loved to tease them, especially when Charleston asked Huan to explain it to Sarong, knowing that Sarong would enjoy hearing it from her. The embarrassment was palpable as both Han and Sarong blushed. Despite the embarrassment, Han accepted the task. Han grabbed Sang's hand and led him to the strongest poison of the Tang clan. Wian looked awkward while the elderly people adored their interaction. Han started pointing at the chi-dissipating poison, the one martial artists feared the most. Once inhaled, it renders energy unusable, so she advised Sarong to be extremely cautious. She pointed out the elementary canal necrotizing poison, spirit-destroying poison, bloody pulp poison, and even the 7-step soul-snatching poison. She told him that all of them were potent poisons, but the Tang clan's strongest poison was something else entirely. She gave him a small seed. Sarong was confused. In his head, he saw it similar to a tiger bean. Han explained that it was the most powerful poison in existence, of course, setting aside the venoms of the 10 great venomous creatures. She added that it was a plant that symbolized the Tang clan. It was called the seed of the tur plant. Sarong was puzzled by its castor seed. He thought of Ryan, a highly potent toxin. Just 2 milligrams could be lethal to an adult. It was famously used in the umbrella assassination of a Bulgarian dissident during the Cold War. It was a poison 100,000 times stronger than cyanide. Sarong uttered that it was the poison that came closest to the Tang clan's ideal. Colorless, odorless, tasteless, and formless. That was why they had named it the rarest and most precious of all poisons, golden poison. When used to kill someone, they called it a golden death. Quan told him to take note that the strongest poison isn't the one that inflicts the most agony or causes the most gruesome death. The strongest poison is the one that kills silently, swiftly, and without leaving a trace. She shared that the Sichuan Tang Clan's poison art strive for the ideal, stealth and certainty. In Sarong's head, they were comparable to a clan of assassins. Muzang told them that it was enough for now and invited Sarong to go see the venomous beasts he had been eager to see. Muzang even offered that, if Sarong was interested, he could oversee their care, and the clan would provide full support for anything he required. In Sarong's head, the translation was clear. They would support his hobby. He looked so excited when they were about to go that the patriarch was immediately called. Pai was panting hard from running fast. They asked him what was the matter. Pai told the patriarch that he needed to head to Black Tortoise Pavilion immediately. The patriarch asked why. Pai was about to say something about the clan elder, but Muzang cut him off with a burst of anger. He asked what those bastards were up to now. Sarong thought they were referring to the branch family members that one had mentioned. Pai informed them that there were two issues. First, the medicine they had sent to the Sichuan city lord didn't have the desired effect, and the lord had sent back a letter full of complaints. Before Pai could reveal the second issue, he looked at Sarong. Sarong sighed as Pai revealed that it was about the haul of 10,000 poisons. Muzang anticipated that rumors were already circulating. They decided to leave for now, but not without Muzang ordering Sarong to come with them to the Black Tortoise Pavilion. At Black Tortoise Pavilion, the elders noticed the patriarch's arrival. They started complaining about how he had made such a critical decision on his own. They protested his choice to pair an orphan of unknown origins with their beloved Han. This triggered Charleston. He didn't like hearing them say that Sarong was an orphan with unknown origins. Charleston started emitting a green aura from his body as he asked if they were insulting his son-in-law. The elders of the clan insisted that it was true. Muzang yelled that he was the one who made the decision, asking if they had a problem with it. The elders were flustered. They asked the Grand Patriarch to talk some sense into the Patriarch. They expressed that trusting the management of the haul of 10,000 poisons to an outsider with unproven abilities was absurd. Muzang emphasized that he had already approved it himself. While this was happening, Han was conscious of Sarong and whispered an apology to him. In Sarong's head, his initial thought was, goodness, as he sighed, realizing he had made her worry. In his mind, he felt that it was she who should be apologizing. Everyone was surprised when Sarong said, "Excuse me, sorry to interrupt your conversation." Then, he started saying that since it was an issue stemming from his lack of ability, he suggested demonstrating his skills and proving himself to the elders of the clan. The elders were caught off guard. Sarong uttered that he could do this by helping them solve the troublesome issue with the Sichuan city lord. In a hushed tone, Han asked him what he was trying to do. Sarong wasn't the type to step forward and make a fuss, but if they were disrupting his peaceful pet owner life, this man wouldn't just let it slide. Sarong had rendered the elders speechless. Eventually, they got triggered and began lecturing him for butting into the conversation of the clan elders. They even challenged him, asking if he knew what the city lord of Sichuan province's letter contained before barging in like that. They called him an insolent nobody and reported him to the clan head for daring to meddle in their affairs. The elders used this opportunity to point out why they had suggested someone from a respectable, established martial clan as a son-in-law instead. Kaolin's wife was starting to get annoyed. Deep inside, Sir Yanglong thought about how these old codgers sounded more absurd the longer they talked. When he was Spicy FA, he had more than 1 million total subscribers, with an average of over 3,000 viewers per stream. He told the elders that, from what he had heard, they still refused to recognize him as the son-in-law of the Sichuan Tang Clan. So, in short, he was still considered a guest. With Spicy FA's large fan base, he had dealt with many disruptive trolls causing chaos without any real purpose. Sarong emphasized that he had saved the precious daughter of the Sichuan Tang Clan, Lady Hyun. On top of that, he had defeated the Bloodhand Rakshasa, Takenyong, and saved the life of the patriarch. He challenged the elders by asking if it was part of the Sichuan Tang Clan's etiquette to insult a guest and benefactor to their face. Deep inside, Sor Yongong knew that the malice he saw in the elders was nothing compared to the trolling he had dealt with as a streamer. It was downright adorable by comparison. The elders were embarrassed and put in their place. They admitted that they had spoken hastily and out of desperation. In his head, Sarong thought of them as pathetic. The Grand Patriarch, however, was amazed by Sarong. One elder brought up that taking down the blood-hand Rakshasa, Takanyang, was going too far. The Patriarch replied that Sarong was telling the truth and showed them a document. Upon seeing it, the elders gasped, their jaws dropping as they confirmed that it was the Blood-Hand Poison Arts secret manual. It was written in blood, making it authentic and belonging to the blood sect. The Patriarch encouraged Sarong to show the elders the spotted centipedes. Sarong gently tapped on his chest while telling the elders to look. The 3 baby spotted centipedes emerged happily. The elders felt nervous upon seeing them. The Patriarch explained that the creatures were the offspring of the blue spotted centipede, proudly sharing that his son-in-law was raising them. He narrated how those little ones had killed Takanyang by biting him to death. The elders couldn't believe their ears. One elder confirmed what the Patriarch meant, that the young warrior had managed to control a blue spotted centipede. The Patriarch, Sarong, and Gu Pei had devilish grins on their faces as they teased the elders. Chan chided them for addressing Sarong as a young warrior, pointing out that it was a sign they still refused to recognize him as his son-in-law. Sarong even managed to warn the elders not to bite. Otherwise, they'd end up as black and lifeless as Takanyang. The elders were stunned. Their attitude changed as they denied refusing to accept Sarong, making lame excuses about how there was a process and it was natural for them to hesitate. The Grand Patriarch sighed and decided to set aside the matter regarding their son-in-law for now. He then inquired why Sarong couldn't enter the Hall of 10,000 Poisons. The elders reasoned that Sarong hadn't fully become part of the family yet. Besides that, they couldn't entrust the Hall of 10,000 Poisons to a young warrior who hadn't even reached the age of maturity. The Grand Patriarch told them the solution was simple. He requested Sarong to demonstrate his ability. Sor Yangong had a grin on his face as he informed them that he would prove himself worthy of the Sichuan Tang Clan the Tang Clan's way, by using poison. The elders went crazy, confirming that Sarong meant he would poison the lord of the Sichuan province. They called him an idiot for planning to kill the lord instead of sending medicine. Sarong was confused, as he was under the impression that the Sichuan Tang Clan dealt with poison. The next day, the Grand Patriarch informed Sarong that he would begin learning the Tang Clan's martial art, the 5 Venoms returning technique. Sarong asked if the training would involve physical exercises as well. The Grand Patriarch replied that as he practiced martial arts, his body would naturally adapt to align with the techniques he learned. Musang elaborated that the Tang Clan prioritized practicality, so Sarong would learn skills that could be immediately applied in real situations. Murim unpacked the weapons. There were arrows, daggers, shuriken, and many more. They started with throwable concealed weapons such as needles, coins, darts, powder, daggers, and throwing knives. Although there were many unconventional concealed weapons, most could be categorized into 5 types. Muang asked Sarong if he knew which one was the easiest to handle. Sarong guessed it was the dagger or throwing knife. He was correct. Muang then asked him what he thought was the most difficult to handle. Sarong answered that it was the powder since it had to be scattered effectively. Musang informed him that the needle was actually the most difficult. Sarong assumed it was because the needle was small and thin, making it hard to throw. Musang replied that it wasn't just that. The difficulty lay in remembering the exact position where the needle was thrown. Muang decided to demonstrate it, believing it would be easier to understand that way. He took out a brush, separated the head from the handle, and then made a sudden throwing movement. The hair of the brush floated in the air before transforming into needles that fell to the ground like rain. Sarong couldn't believe how the bristles embedded themselves like needles. They kept falling from the sky. Muang shared that the Tang Clan had a hidden weapon technique called sky-obscuring flower rain. It was a secret art of the Tang Clan where hundreds or even thousands of needles fell like a rain of flowers, covering the area. In Sor Yingong's mind, it sounded like he had to spread needles everywhere and fight in that turf. Sarang politely communicated that if the entire area was filled with such needles, there would hardly be any space left to move. That's when Mu Sang laughed and replied that it was exactly as it seemed. Sarang must remember the positions of the needles, so he wouldn't end up falling victim to his own technique. To Sarang, it was unbelievable. He sweated profusely as he confirmed with Muang if he meant that he needed to remember the positions of both the needles that deflected opponents and those that fell out of place. Muang replied, "Of course." Muang informed him that with the 5 poison body, he would have to memorize at least 100 positions just to begin. Sarang turned pale. When that session was over, he fell face down on the ground. Lady Hayan appeared. She asked him if he was prepared, wearing a beekeeping suit since she had heard he was going to catch a hornet. She asked if it was unnecessary. Sarang replied, "Not at all." He had been planning to wait for a hornet, but with her help, they could catch it themselves. One double-checked with him, asking if he had been waiting for the hornet to come. Sarang replied that she would understand once they got there. Sarang asked Hayan if she knew where the hornet's nest was. One replied that she had found one nearby, so they could go there right away. Sarang had also put on a beekeeping suit. Han brought up the topic of the letters sent to the city lord of Sichuan province and asked if Sarang had seen it. Sarang replied that he had. Han was worried that, since he was still young, he might not have fully understood the letter's contents. Han blushed. Sarang told her that Yang Min was quite important. One felt embarrassed and told him to stop talking. It also seemed like Sarang was aware of the issue troubling the city lord of Sichuan, none other than erectile dysfunction. Or, simply put, his rod was not getting hard anymore. One became suspicious of Sarang, wondering how he knew so much for his age. Sarang made an excuse, saying he had lived alone for a while. One felt embarrassed and quickened her pace. A few hours later, they arrived at the forest. Sarang got distracted by the creatures there. Hayan had to keep him on track until they reached the place. It was like a mini cave and certainly looked like a place where hornets would inhabit. Quine inquired what it meant to find a bee lacking a hive. They started putting on their head protectors. Yang explained that it meant that while they came looking for hornets, they wouldn't be capturing any. One was puzzled. They made their way toward the hole. Sarang informed her that the venomous insect they were after could be found in smaller, weaker hives. One didn't know about that. Fortunately, it seemed the hive had what they were looking for. An insect came out, and using chopsticks, Sarang captured it. They hadn't come there to catch a hornet. The insect they were after would solve the Sichuan city lord's troubles. Han asked about the bug and if it was a ground beetle. She guessed correctly. Sarang found out that it was called a ground beetle in that world, but in the modern era, it was known as a blister beetle. One asked if it was normal for ground beetles to be found in hornet nests. Sarang explained that their life cycle was quite peculiar. Blister beetles had an unusual method of reproduction. Normally, most insects either guarded the spot where they laid eggs or created a safe environment for their eggs to hatch. However, the blister beetle simply laid its eggs wherever it pleased. There was a funny skid in Sarang's mind, imagining the blister beetle saying to its boss, "Hold up, I gotta drop some eggs first," before heading out. Anywhere would do. No fuss, no frills. It just laid them. The bare minimum of consideration it showed was dumping them all in one spot. When the miracle happened and the blister beetle larvae hatched, they started crawling toward the highest place nearby. When they reached the top, they did something bizarre. They clustered together and imitated a flower. Bees mistook the fake flower for a real one and approached it. The moment a bee got close enough, the entire swarm jumped onto the carpenter bee's body in an instant. And that was it, game over. The carpenter bee's home was as good as gone. Sarang wasn't sure why blister beetles favored giant hornet nests, but apparently it was the most suitable environment for their larvae to grow. Hayan felt sorry for the giant hornets. Sarang replied that there was nothing to be done about it. Hayan knew that the bug caused burns on the skin and heard that eating too much of it could be fatal. Sarang affirmed this. The orange liquid dripping from a blister beetle contained a toxic substance called cantharidin. When this substance touched the skin, it created blisters akin to burns. Hayan blushed and asked if it had that effect. Sarang replied that it did, and it could immediately raise a man's rod. Feeling embarrassed, Heian made him stop explaining and encouraged him to go back to the Hall of 10,000 Poisons. Sarang wanted to catch a few more blister beetles. Once they had secured enough, they returned to the Hall of 10,000 Poisons and taught the warriors how to prepare the medicine. Sarang told them to listen carefully. He instructed them to dry the ground beetle and grind it into powder. He explained that 1/10 of that powder was toxic. The poison became life-threatening when 3 ml of it were ingested. If a person consumed 3/10 of 1 ml of the poison per guan body weight, about half of those who ingested it would die. Sarang requested them to prepare medicine with 1/10 of 1 ml of the poison. That would be roughly the amount of 10 drops of liquid. He explained that 1 ml was equivalent to 3.75 milligrams, and 1 guan was 3.75 kilograms. He asked them if it made sense. Deep inside, Sir Yang felt that his brain was about to explode. One warrior removed his mask and stated that Sang's explanations were incredibly detailed. They never expected him to be skilled in mathematics. The warrior assured Sarang that he would make sure they succeeded no matter what. Sarang expressed how much he depended on them. Later that night, someone was talking about how surreal it was that ground beetles had such effects. It was Muong, and he was talking to Han. It made Muong consider re-evaluating the poisons in the Tang Clan arsenal. Han expressed the same thought. Then he brought up the topic of Sarang being good at math. Muong shared how Sarang calculated the solution's concentration and estimated it to match the weight of 10 drops of liquid. That was amazing. Muzang admitted that he thought himself knowledgeable in the field of poisons, but Sarang was on a different level. The more he learned about him, the more he realized what a gem that child was. He teased Hun, asking if she liked Sarang even more now. Hun blushed and expressed how she felt regretful for being hasty in the beginning. Muzang replied that as long as she made up for it going forward, that's what mattered. Muzang asked how they planned to test the medicine once it was complete. Hun blushed, turning red as a tomato. She mentioned how the branch family elders were saying that Sarang had been too insolent. Sarang stated that he'd test it by raising the clan elders straight up. Muang's jaw dropped, and he laughed out loud, saying the kid was amusing. The next day, they were all gathered in a hall. The clan elders were skeptical. A warrior gave Sarang a wooden box and informed him that he had blended licorice powder and honey to make it sweeter and easier to consume. Sarang was amazed by how the man paid attention to even the smallest details. Sarang asked the warrior if he had made it exactly as described. The warrior replied that he had followed the instructions carefully. Other clan members commented that they should stop making such a big deal out of it. They even challenged how amazing it could possibly be. The patriarch ordered silence, then asked Sarang how he would prove the efficacy of the medicine. Sarang acted surprised at the question. The clan elders yelled that it was natural to confirm the efficacy. One elder screamed that they would never dare send poison with unverified efficacy to the city lord of Sichuan. Another elder seconded that if something went wrong, it could lead to a major disaster. Sarang replied that there was no other choice. The warrior understood, but the clan elders were confused when the warrior gave them the medicine. They got annoyed, thinking it seemed like Sarang was telling them to test it themselves. A loud elder asked Sarang if he even knew what that thing was. Another elder commented that Sarang had played outside for so long that it seemed his insides had turned black too. Sarang grinned and called his grandfather. Muzang asked what he needed. Sarang brought up what Muzang had said earlier, that those who had mastered the martial arts of the Tang Clan were never afraid of poison. Muzang agreed with him. Then Sarang pointed out that the elders' reactions implied that they were scared. Muzang got along with Sang's scheme and affirmed that statement. Sarang taunted the great elders of a clan that had surely attained the level of mastering 100 poisons. He used reverse psychology, expressing that surely those elders weren't afraid of something as trivial as ground beetle poison. That angered the elder, who split the medicine into 2 portions. They stated that they had nothing to fear from such low-grade, insignificant poison. They took the medicine and told Sarang he underestimated them. They threatened Sarang that if it did nothing, he would face consequences. The elder yelled that they would uphold the laws and principles of their clan. They chewed the medicine. Silence followed. Then they smirked and yelled that nothing was happening at all, but one elder felt his manhood stand up. The long slumber of the snake was over. They were embarrassed, and so that day, the laws and principles of the clan were set straight. Pun intended. It happened magnificently. The medicine was sent to the city lord of Sichuan, and its effects were proven excellent. A little while later, the elders walked the hall holding their pants away from their bodies to hide the evidence. I remember I used to walk like this when that time came, Sorang joked. Muzang laughed. Sorang told Muzang that it was just as he said. Provoking the elders with something related to poison made them fall for it immediately. Muzang knew that they were the type of people who had nothing left but their pride, so naturally it would happen. However, Muzang was also aware that their actions came from a place of concern for the clan. He told Sorang not to resent them so much. In the end, we are all one family, Muzang uttered. Sorang replied that he understood. Han hastily made her way toward them. She reported that something terrible had happened. They asked her what it was, and she told them that their children were acting strange. Sorang blushed and was dumbfounded. Muzang became serious when he called his grandson-in-law and grabbed him by the collar. Muzang asked, "What is the meaning of this? Why do you have children?" Sorang was drenched in cold sweat. Muzang grabbed Sorang by the back of his neck and asked again why they had children, especially when they hadn't even had their wedding ceremony yet. Han yelled that what she meant weren't human children, but the spotted centipedes that Sorang was raising. Sorang was stunned. Overly surprised was an understatement. Lately, he had been doing a lot of physical training sessions, and each time, he asked Han to take care of them. He ended up completely forgetting about them. He was worried that something had happened to his babies and requested to see them. It looked like he was about to grab Han's bosom since she kept the centipedes there. Han squealed that they weren't there. Muzang was dumbfounded. A moment later, the 3 blue-spotted centipedes were all brown and weak. A handprint was plastered on Sorang's face. It was funny how he got slapped because of his earlier actions. Sorang stared at the centipedes intensely, while Muzang was curious if those centipedes had just dropped from Han's body with a thud. Han replied that they seemed fine earlier, but now she was concerned that they might be getting sick. Their color looked a little pale, and their shells seemed odd. Sorang assured her that there was no reason to worry. He explained that the process is called shedding. Creatures like centipedes with hard shells shed them when they grow bigger, and that's probably what was happening. Meng asked if they were already shedding their shells. Sor Young replied that it would happen soon. Suddenly, a small centipede began moving strangely, and then its head emerged from the shell. They were impressed. It was quite an amazing sight. Shortly after, the other 2 centipedes started shedding their shells as well. The shedding process was successful, and all 3 were now fully out. One noticed that the centipedes looked almost twice as big as before. She asked Sor Young if those little ones had names. Sorong realized that they didn't. His thinking face looked funny, but what was even funnier was the names he came up with. Number 1, Number 2, and Number 3. It was so silly that Han immediately refused to accept them. She argued that spotted centipedes are said to turn into dragons after living for 1,000 years, so they needed dignified dragon-worthy names. Sor Young childishly argued that there's no way a spotted centipede would turn into a dragon, even after 1,000 years. Muzang joined the banter, saying that a 1,000-year-old spotted centipede is indeed called a dragon. Hearing that, Sorang realized it must have been his grandfather who taught Han that. After thinking seriously for a moment, Sorang decided on their names: Nova, Myra, and Grace. The first one was Nova, symbolizing a new beginning. The second was Myra, which means fragrance. And the third was Grace, representing elegance and gentleness. Han was delighted with the names and didn't object, reasoning that the pretense of naming the children is the father's responsibility anyway. The spotted centipedes now had their names. A day later, the centipedes returned to cling to Sor Young. His body still didn't feel completely dry yet, but it was good enough to move around now, although he still felt a little awkward. The centipedes were much heavier now. They used to be about the size of a thick sausage, but now they had grown to be as large as his forearm. It seemed that the centipedes felt his embrace was too tight for them, so they coiled snugly around his arms and waist. While he was lying there snuggling with them, he overheard someone talking. Two men were passing by. One of them held a loaded pouch and remarked that the Sichuan Tang Clan was always so extravagant. He invited his friend to visit the brothel, and the friend agreed, laughing as he said that making money had never been this easy. Curious about their conversation, Soreng decided to investigate. At the pavilion, Cheon shared exciting news. The medicine they had sent to the city lord of Duan had worked exceptionally well. The city lord had sent a message of gratitude along with a generous reward. Soreng and Han were delighted. Cheon proudly expressed how glad he was to have reaped such benefits as soon as he had taken Soreng as his son-in-law. Soreng felt pleased that he had been able to help. Because of Soreng's accomplishment, Cheon suggested granting him one of his elixirs as a reward, knowing that Soreng would probably refuse if it were called a gift. Soreng's grandfather had mentioned before that elixirs are substances that enhance internal energy. Han curiously asked what kind of elixir it was. Cheon replied that it was nothing extraordinary, just the honey of the golden-haired king bee. In Soreng's mind, he pieced the words together and deduced that it was regular honey. However, knowing how important internal energy was for becoming a martial master, he decided to accept it. Just as he was about to thank his father-in-law, Han interrupted. She reminded Cheon that he was rewarding Soreng. So why was he offering mere honey? Cheon grew nervous seeing Han's stern expression. Han scolded her father, saying that what Soreng had accomplished was no small feat. She argued that, even if the golden-haired king bee was a mid-level venomous creature, honey was the lowest grade elixir. She insisted that Soreng deserved a more valuable reward. Her words made Soreng blush. Han continued scolding her father, saying that he should grant Soreng an elixir that provided a year's worth of internal energy instead of just 2 months. Cheon was saddened by her harsh critique, reasoning that it was still an elixir and quite expensive to obtain. However, Han was not convinced. She argued that compared to what Soreng had achieved, it was a pittance. Cheon, feeling cornered, explained to Soreng that the golden-haired king bee was a mid-tier venomous creature occasionally found in jungles. It was about the size of a small dog, and consuming its honey granted internal energy equivalent to 2 full months of reclusive meditation. Imagining the size of the bee, Soreng became excited and amused. However, Han quickly reined in his excitement, telling him she was upset on his behalf. Cheon clarified that he never meant to undermine Soreng's efforts. He thought Soreng might want to see the golden-haired king bee in person. Hearing that, Soreng's excitement returned. He asked if Cheon was suggesting that he go and see the bee himself. Cheon confirmed that was exactly what he had in mind. Internally, Soreng interpreted that as harvesting the honey himself. Having done similar things before during his YouTuber days, he was eager to take on the task. The gentleman prepared for the journey with excitement. Soreng confidently shared that when it came to bees, he was basically an expert. Cheon was pleased to see Soreng's enthusiasm. As they made their way to the location, Soreng asked what the golden-haired king bee looked like. Cheon simply replied, like a bee, way inside, realizing the journey was not going to be as simple as they hoped. When they arrived at the designated location, they were surprised to find 2 clans fighting. Apparently, both groups had received the same information about the bees' whereabouts. One clan asked the other if the person who sold them the information had scruffy hair and a big mole on his face. The other clan confirmed that it was indeed the same person. Despite the conflict, both clans were determined not to back down. Hearing the description of the scammers, Soreng suddenly remembered the 2 men he had overheard earlier. He realized that those 2 had gone around selling the information to multiple parties. One of the angry men from the Tang clan yelled, "How dare you insult the Sichuan Tang clan in Sichuan?" The loud, angry voice, coupled with the mention of the Sichuan Tang clan, made the scammers nervous. It became clear that this peaceful honey harvesting trip was far from what Soreng had envisioned. Before Soreng left for his first journey outside the clan, Cheon gave him a warning. He reminded him that as a member of their family and a part of the Tang clan, he must never forget who he is. And so, the honey harvesting journey began with excitement, danger, and a bit of unexpected adventure. Soreng politely replied with a yes to Cheon's statement. Cheon then glanced at something to his side, prompting Sarong to turn his head as well. There were men lined up in front of them. Chilson informed Sarong that he would be leading those people. It was time for him to learn how to manage others. Sarong was flustered, thinking that one should be the one taking charge. "You're being silly," Chilson said with a chuckle. "Since one is your woman, and you're her partner, that makes you the highest authority in this group." Upon hearing the word partner, Sarong's face flushed red. One reassured him with a confident smile. "You'll do well," she promised. "I'll be here to help you every step of the way." Determined, Sarong replied, "I'll do my best." But deep down, he was overwhelmed by the chaos unfolding around him. As he stood in the midst of the confusion, he silently wondered what his first move should be. Turning to the man standing beside him, Sarong asked, "What do we do in this situation? Should we share the information with them?" The man Sarong was addressing was Wolfgang, the leader of the Venom Blood unit. Wolfgang was visibly displeased at the notion of someone daring to spread the Tang clan's information. One seconded his frustration. "Whoever is behind this has guts," she said coldly, her aura becoming intimidating. "Selling information purchased by the Sichuan Tang Clan to someone else, that's unforgivable." Those from other clans recognized her immediately. "The poisonous flower of the 3 flowers of Murim," one man whispered in disbelief. Another man, stunned to see her in person, quickly bowed in respect. "We have no intention of interfering with the Sichuan Tang Clan's affairs," he stammered. "We'll withdraw immediately." The representatives of the Noble Origin sect and the Jade Ghost Slayer sect also decided to withdraw, though it was clear they were reluctant. One man from the Jade Ghost Slayer sect cursed under his breath, vowing to catch the rat bastard who leaked the information and skin him alive. As the opposing clans scattered, Sarong couldn't help but marvel at the sheer influence of the Sichuan Tang Clan. Turning to Wolfgang, he asked, "Is it resolved now?" Wolfgang shook his head. "No, it's not over. Those unorthodox bastards won't back off that easily," he replied. "They're probably hiding somewhere, waiting for the right moment to strike." Wolfgang suggested setting up a nearby camp and keeping watch in shifts. He then instructed Pai to scout the area and find where the enemy had set up their camp. Sarong, still worried, glanced at one, who placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Don't worry, it'll be fine," she said with a smile. However, Sarong wasn't thinking about the unorthodox clans. His thoughts were focused on the golden-haired king bees. Hiding behind a boulder, they observed the hive. The bees were unlike anything he'd seen before. They looked almost cute, with fluffy golden fur covering their bodies. One was equally mesmerized. "It's my first time seeing them too," she admitted. "They're huge." "They're adorable," Sarong said, fascinated. Wolfgang, standing nearby, was pleased as well. But Sarong noticed something unusual. "The colony seems small," he remarked. "There's only a few hundred bees." Juan, surprised by his observation, asked, "How can you tell without even entering the hive?" Sarong smiled. "I can estimate it by observing how many bees go in and out of the entrance." Just then, Pai returned with his report. "We found them," he announced. Wolfgang inquired about the enemy's camp location. Pai hesitated for a moment before confirming Wolfgang's suspicion. "They're on the opposite side," he said. "They're not doing much right now, but if something happens, they'll definitely make a move." Wolfgang decided to wait until nightfall to harvest the honey using the Tang Clan's method. Curious, Sarong asked, "What's the Tang Clan method?" "If we burn mugwort leaves," Wolfgang explained, "the smoke will calm the bees, making it easier to harvest the honey." Sarong nodded. "That's a smart method," he admitted. However, Pai pointed out a flaw in the plan. "The wind is blowing toward us right now. If we light the fire, the smoke will blow our way." Their plan was now useless. Sarong thought for a moment before coming up with an idea. Pai noticed his expression and asked, "Is it something clever?" "Actually, yes," Sarong replied. "Since the wind is blowing toward us, it'll mask our scent. That means we have an opportunity to get closer without being detected." Before anyone could stop him, Sarong was already making his way toward the hive. One quickly grabbed his shirt. "Are you crazy?" "It's dangerous," she warned. "The golden-haired king bee is a mid-level venomous creature." "I'll be fine," Sarong said confidently. I'll just take a quick look and come back. As he struggled to free himself from her grip, a pebble dislodged from the ground and rolled toward the hive. Both Sarong and one froze. Oh! In the blink of an eye, the entire colony swarmed out of the hive. Run! One yelled, grabbing Sarong and making a mad dash for safety. Later, after they'd narrowly escaped, they were both scolded to hell and back for their recklessness. At dusk, Sarong was still pondering alternative ways to harvest the honey. He knew that lighting a fire against the wind would trap them between the unorthodox clans and the hive. He also realized that the golden-haired king bee was different from other bees he knew. These bees could detect ground vibrations from up to 30 kilometers away, an ability that even ground bees didn't possess. Lost in thought, Sarong was startled when one appeared beside him. The kids finished their meal, she said. They kept trying to wander off, so I brought them to you. Thanks, Sarong replied with a warm smile. He gently told the little ones to behave. One sat down beside him, causing him to blush again. Have you made any progress? She asked softly. I need to observe a bit more, he admitted. Feeling a little guilty, one apologized. I'm sorry if I'm pressuring you. I didn't mean to make you feel burdened. Her apology only made Sarong more determined to find a solution. Just then, one noticed something on the other side of the old tree. Monkeys, she exclaimed, pointing at a group of noisy creatures. One of the monkeys appeared particularly angry, flailing its arms wildly. Suddenly, Sarong stiffened. One, he said cautiously, do you smell something sweet? One sniffed the air and nodded. Yes, I do. Sarong's eyes widened. It must be pheromones. Realizing what was about to happen, he grabbed one's hand. We need to leave. Now! Without hesitation, one grabbed Sarong by the armpits and leapt into the air, putting as much distance between them and the hive as possible. As they flew, a massive swarm of bees emerged from the hive, targeting the unfortunate monkeys below. The bees attacked viciously, swarming over the fallen monkeys. Panting from the adrenaline rush, one glanced at Sarong. How did you know they were about to attack? It was the scent, Sarong explained. One, finally understanding, nodded. It smelled like magnolia flowers. Sarong couldn't contain his excitement. Exactly. That's it. As he laughed like a maniac, one blushed. His hands were still on her shoulders, and his devilish grin made her heart race. With a mischievous glint in his eyes, Sarong declared, I've thought of a way. A way to wipe out those unorthodox bastards who are after my honey bees. Meanwhile, on the other side of the forest, all the members of the sect were gathered, waiting for the perfect moment to act. Everyone seemed to be enjoying themselves, especially the sect leader, who was quickly becoming drunk as they roasted fish over a fire. The leader took another swig and remarked how delicious everything was. One of the members, a man with a scar across his face, asked the leader when he thought the Tang clan would move to collect the honey. The leader admitted it was hard to say, noting how 3 days ago, the Tang clan was everywhere, but now they had gone completely silent. He speculated that the Tang clan would likely act soon, a notion the scarred man agreed with. The leader then asked if they were certain they could make good money from this, which made everyone burst into laughter. The scarred man explained that candles made from the golden king bee's wax were treasures exclusively used by the imperial family. He added that the Tang clan would only take the honey and leave the hives behind, leaving them to claim the real prize. Excitement bubbled among the group at the thought of the Tang clan failing their honey collection. Malicious laughter echoed as they imagined not only getting the honey, but also the hives. One of the men brought up H, referring to her as the infamous poison master, known as the Three Flowers of Murim. He warned the group to keep an eye on her and ensure she didn't die at their hand, at least not yet. This suggestion was met with more wicked laughter as they entertained the thought of claiming H for themselves, with one member suggesting that she might even become a Tang clan in-law. Another joke that favors like that needed to be returned. As they laughed, one of the henchmen suddenly noticed a strange scent wafting in from afar. Still joking, he suggested it must be the natural perfume of the poisonous flower. Another, chuckling along, bet that even her natural scent was as intoxicating as that aroma. The wind carried the fragrance across the forest, accompanied by an unusual noise. The man who had been joking moments ago now froze in fear and asked the others what the smell was. As they turned their attention to the sky, their expressions changed to shock and terror. Against the backdrop of the moon, a massive swirling cloud was descending. It was an uncountable swarm of golden king bees. Two members screamed in panic, asking if that was really a swarm of bees, and the others confirmed their worst fears. Without wasting another moment, they all ran for their lives, scrambling to escape the incoming wave of golden king bees. The once adorable bees, with their shining golden eyes, were now on a rampage, attacking anything that moved. Within seconds, the swarm had done its work, leaving the sect members covered in painful welts caused by the bees' bites, just as they had done to the monkeys earlier. Meanwhile, the scene shifted to show the mixture of ingredients Sarong had prepared to produce the pheromone. It had been strategically placed on the ground so the wind could carry the scent toward the henchman's camp. Hidden behind trees and rocks, Sarong and H watched as the bees mobilized, following the pheromone's trail. H was astonished that the plan had actually worked, while the sect leaders stood slack-jawed, amazed that the entire swarm was heading in one direction. H turned to Sarong and asked how he had managed it, admitting she hadn't expected the bees to become so aggressive over the scent of flowers. Sarong, clearly excited, explained that the smell had triggered the bees to launch a full-scale attack. Curious, H asked how simply crushing some flowers and fruits and spreading the juice could provoke such a response. Sarong, brimming with enthusiasm, explained that the specific scent acted as a signal for the bees. Using examples like the gigachad beetle and adorable bees, he elaborated that the phenomenon was due to pheromones, a type of chemical signal used by animals of the same species to communicate. He added that social insects like ants and wasps heavily relied on pheromones for tasks such as locating food. Finally, he explained that the pheromone he used was the exact same chemical signal the bees released when initiating a mass attack: isoamyl acetate. H, enchanted by Sarong's explanation, said it was fascinating that he knew the scent emitted by magnolia was the same one bees used to signal an attack. Embarrassed by her praise, Sarong replied that what was truly fascinating was her ability to recognize those scents. She explained that, as a descendant of the Tang Clan, which specialized in poisons, she had to be highly sensitive to smells. Shifting focus from their explanations, Sarong noticed no bees were emerging from the hive. He concluded that this was the perfect moment to act and ventured into the Golden King bee's hive to harvest their honey. Holding smoldering mugwort leaves, whose smoke soothed the bees, the trio moved cautiously, observing their surroundings. Standing at the entrance to the massive tree, surrounded by the silence of the night, the leader warned of the danger and insisted on going first. As he stepped inside, his eyes widened in amazement, marveling at how much larger the hive was than they had anticipated. Looking upward, they saw enormous golden glowing honeycombs, fully living up to the name Golden King bees. The leader confirmed that the hive appeared empty, with no sounds of bees buzzing around. As they ventured further, Sarong noticed something unusual. After a closer inspection, he realized there was no honey. H, after looking around, confirmed his observation. This struck the leader as odd, noting that such a thing had never happened before. Sarong also observed the absence of eggs in the hive. Curious, the leader asked if this might be related to the lack of honey. Drawing on his expertise, Sarong hypothesized that the bees were preparing to migrate. They must have consumed all their stored honey and carried it in their stomachs for the journey. He suggested this behavior might have been triggered by the frequent presence of humans nearby. H agreed, stating that it made complete sense. Sarong elaborated that when bees prepare to migrate, the queen stops laying eggs because they can no longer care for larvae during their transition. While exploring the tree's interior, Sarong suddenly froze in shock. Hidden and camouflaged among the hive's remains, he spotted a lone golden king bee that had been left behind. With a sly smile, Sarong turned to the leader and asked how long he could sustain his mobility techniques without resting. The leader, confused by the question, estimated he could manage about half a day. Before he could ask why Sarong wanted to know, a scout interrupted urgently, announcing that the Golden King bees were returning and they needed to leave immediately. On high alert, the leader ordered everyone to retreat. He told Sarong to abandon his search and get out of the hive. In the background, Sarong continued inspecting the hive until H came to retrieve him. Grabbing him by his clothes, she insisted they leave immediately. They all dashed to safety, knowing that even the Tang clan's techniques to calm the bees wouldn't be enough to prevent an attack. As Sarong was dragged along, it became apparent that he had taken the Golden King Bee Queen and hidden it inside his clothes. Moments later, the group finally breathed a sigh of relief, grateful to have narrowly escaped a potential mass attack. H expressed her relief at having made it out before the bees returned, only to pause when she noticed something moving inside Sarong's clothing. Horrified, she demanded to know what he was carrying. With a sheepish smile, Sarong revealed the Golden King Bee Queen and nonchalantly explained that since they couldn't retrieve the honey, he had brought the one who could produce it. Everyone stood speechless, processing the situation. When the gravity of what he had done sank in, they were thrown into a panic, unsure of what to do next. The Golden King Bee Queen, ever adorable, emitted a soft sound that only emphasized her charm. Sarong, now grinning, turned to the squad leader and warned that the bees would soon realize their queen was missing and start chasing them. As if on cue, a massive swarm of Golden King bees, willing to sacrifice themselves for their queen, appeared on the horizon, heading straight for them. With an innocent smile, Sarong cheerfully stated, "We need to run now," and so began a life-or-death chase.